you can't see more than 20 yards into the brush.
If I'm falling, I tuck my body and I roll through.
The glowing of the tritium, and that shelf life of the tritium is 10 years. Chem-light is not very visible off in the distance, and it's extremely not visible when it's in your mouth.
Hey guys, welcome back. My name is Jason, and today we are discussing movement at night. It's something that seems to be brought up quite a bit, especially in the comments section. When we're talking, anytime you're talking about SHTF, anytime you talk about that, anytime you bring it up and you talk about moving, everybody always says, I'd only move at night. You know, I'd only move at night because that's the time when I can be the stealthiest and the sneakiest, and if I've got to cover ground, no one's going to detect me at nighttime. Maybe, unless you trip, fall, stab a stick in your eye, break your ankle, trip over the barbed wire fence, whatever, the dog starts barking at you.
Get lost.
Like, there's a lot of reasons why you may or may not want to move at night. So the first thing that I kind of want to discuss with my good friend Bill Stoker here from Stoker-Matic is, why would you want to move at night in the first place? What situation, paint me a picture if you want, why would we want to move at night in the first place?
A couple ways to approach that answer. One could be the obvious, something happened at night and therefore you must move at night, right? Because it's out of necessity, not necessarily out of a desire.
Valid point, yeah. Not necessarily for a tactical reason, it's just, it's dark.
Right.
And you got to go.
Yeah, you got to do some kind of dismount of movement.
Yep.
A degree of a tactical advantage, whether you're moving when it's raining out because nobody wants to be out and get wet, moving through terrain that people don't want to move to, and then moving at night offers you at least a degree of security, whether it's because most people are sleeping at night, they're generally not aware, they're having supper, even out in a contested environment, people have to eat dinner, they need to sleep.
People are still going to generally sleep at night.
Right, yeah.
And
of course, there's risks that we'll talk about in a second, because there's a false sense of security that's also there with moving at night, because there are things like...
I can't see you, so you can't see me.
You're going to make more noise when you move at night if you're not moving slower and being much more methodical. And so you're going to be more prone to break noise discipline at night. Especially, in the type of woods that we have here, there's dead branches everywhere.
You cannot walk quietly. If it hasn't rained, you cannot walk through the woods very quiet. It's just, you're going to make noise.
And then, depending on the environment and how non-permissive it is, you have to assume that if there is an adversary out there, that they have things to detect you at night, whether it's thermals, whether it's night vision, and using IR. So there's a lot of other preparation that we need to do to consider what we're wearing, what we're not wearing, to make sure that it has some sort of IR compliance. So there are some risks of moving at night, but sometimes you have to assess those risks
versus
the rewards, mitigate the risks where you can, whether it's using terrain to your advantage to hide yourself, both visually and audibly, and using like creeks, moving, and just using a bunch of other natural resources that are out there to help us move easier at night.
Like you talked about before, it doesn't necessarily have to be a non-permissive environment because of events or whatever we're talking about. Moving at night in the desert is a smart idea. In the summertime in the desert, when it's 130 degrees,
you got to conserve yourself.
Oh my gosh, you will die.
Yeah, absolutely.
You literally die if you're not really, really smart about that. So moving at night and not getting lost in the darkness and not stepping on the rattlesnakes and stuff, and all these things are important.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that kind of, so I grew up next to and was in and on the Mescalero reservation, Apache reservation in New Mexico a lot because of the work that my dad was in. And they would talk about their grandfathers and their great-grandfathers and some of the simple tactics that they used. Moving during the day, they would stop, break for supper. After night fell, they would pick up and move their camp no less than 400 meters, right? Because if anybody had eyes on you during the day, they knew where you stopped,
Oh.
And so you would relocate so that under the guise of darkness, so that nobody would see where you're actually bedding down
And
for
then
the night.
they'd have to hunt for you.
Right.
That's interesting. And give you enough time to
Right.
potentially react. That's interesting. Never really thought about that.
Yeah.
We touched on a little bit of why you want to move at night. We talked a little bit about why you would not want to move at night, stick in the eye kind of thing. And then everybody wants to talk about night vision, right?
Yeah.
Either some sort of night vision or some sort of thermal, something like that. Pros and cons to that. For me, one, it's expensive, and I have a lot of things that I need to spend my time and money on.
Yeah.
And that's not thermal and not night vision. And you can disagree in the comment section. Happy to hash that out in the comment section. Please disagree with me and tell me I'm an idiot for, buying my son parts for his motorcycle instead of thermal. Please let me know what you think about that. I don't like things with batteries. It's more things to carry, more things that most people aren't fit enough to put in their pack and carry anyway.
Right.
More weight, more bulk, more things that can go wrong and fail you. And if you're dependent upon that, if you have night vision, you should still know how to move without it.
Right.
That's my thoughts.
Well, it's kind of like with optics on your weapon. Like those are your secondary. Your primary is your iron sights.
Right.
And so you have to be right with that first.
Oh, yeah.
Like I love night vision. I love thermal. I think they're great gadget toys. And they're not toys, but they're tools. But we can become dependent on them, right? And the difficult thing with using night vision, with using any sort of night optic, is you lose depth perception when you're moving about. Could you imagine walking around like this?
Yeah.
Even if it's mounted on your helmet, which I'm not a fan of helmets anyways, but just imagine, I mean, you're losing one eye altogether. You're losing some depth perception.
It is tricky. I've tried to walk and run with nods on, and it's a learning curve.
Right. If you put these instruments to the test, especially in the environment where we're at, you cannot see this open field. It'd be great if you're sitting in an LPOP or something and you're not moving and you're just observing an open field. Those are great instruments and tools for that. But if you're looking through the brush, you can't see more than 20 yards into the brush with either one of these two instruments anyways.
Right.
What you need to be concerned about moving at night is the 10, 15 feet in front of you and have that situational awareness.
Okay. Is that something that you think people should invest in? Do you think people should spend their hard-earned money on some sort of night vision, FLIR, something like that, as opposed, or is their money probably better spent on something else? The average guy.
So, I mean, the average guy, probably something else.
Yeah.
You look at, investing between $1,000 and $5,000 at the end of the day on something that is not a piece of junk and that is going to fail you. Like, we've all made financial mistakes in buying stuff.
Yeah.
We started off cheap, thinking we're just going to dip our toes. We lose it, we break it, whatever, or we just find out that it's a kid's toy at the end of the day. There are a lot of other things and a lot of other priorities. I would rather invest, if I didn't have a good compass, for example, I would rather have a tool that I can use for the rest of my life because it's analog than to have something that may or may not break after the warranty is over.
A bomb-proof thing. Yeah. Invest in something solid that you can
have
pass down to your
good
kids.
pack, right?
Yeah. I agree. I would buy something like handcrafted boots,
right? Yeah.
Before I would buy,
absolutely,
night vision.
Now, for those of y'all who are out there and you have all the other stuff, and you have $5,000 sitting around in your bank. Hit us up.
Income.
We're looking for sponsors right now.
If you got disposable income, listen, I will help in any way that I can. Right now, Bill and I are basically waiting on it to get dark. It's pretty close, so we can walk out into the field and kind of demonstrate some of the stuff that we're going to talk about. It's going to make it easier for you to move at night. Things that have worked for me, and then things that have worked for Bill, and vice versa. And some things are going to mesh and overlap, and some things are going to be I'm going to learn a lot of stuff from Bill, I'm sure. But before we do that, what comes to mind is the time that it takes for your eye, the human eye, to adjust to darkness, to nearly complete darkness.
Yeah.
Our human eye is adapted to adjust at the rate of the sunset, basically. That's what happens. Without external light and artificial lights, my eyes will adjust perfectly fine to the darkness at the speed of the sunset.
Yeah.
If you introduce artificial light and you light on, light off, it doesn't work that way. You will be blind for a bit.
Right.
And it typically takes, in my experience, about 20 to 30 minutes, give or take, before I can start seeing what's going on.
Right.
And that's something that you need to take into consideration before you start running off into the darkness.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Right?
Like, let's say you start off in the house
Mm-hmm.
and there's a need arises that you need to depart that. You need to know and understand that it is going to take your eyes. My golden rule is half an hour.
Sure.
So if I was going to leave your house, I would go set up a small post up somewhere for half an hour and then initiate my movement.
Right.
Haven't given my time.
So you're not completely blind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you'd be surprised at how much you can see at night once you are accustomed to it.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, and I have noticed that my peripheral vision seems to pick up things a little bit better in really dark situations. My peripheral vision can see a little bit better than my direct vision.
Right.
I don't know exactly what that is. I don't know the science behind it, but I've read that and I have noticed that myself. So looking slightly off to the side of something that I kind of want to see if there's something there, a guy standing there or whatever, seems to help. Your results may vary, but that's something that I have noticed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and and with that, I would say you have to get out and work through these skills and figure out what is right, what is not right, what works for you and what doesn't work for you. Like if you just sit around during the daytime and talk about it, but you never get out and go do it, the time is now.
Right.
To make those mistakes and to get those lessons learned.
Yeah, and a lot of it's just really simple, dumb stuff that we just don't think about.
Right.
Me too. I'm guilty of that too. It's really simple stuff that I'm like, oh, geez, genius. Like, some of us take for granted that we know that a red light doesn't affect your night vision. You can use a red light. That's why there's red lights in submarines and things like that in those kind of environments, because red light doesn't screw with your night vision. You can turn it on, turn it off, and then you're still good. A lot of people don't know that, but
that's why military maps are red light readable.
That's right. That's exactly right. So that's a little fun fact there that if you weren't aware of. Using a red light with a red filter on it of some sort is really, really handy, really helpful if you plan on moving at night without a bright white flashlight kind of thing going on.
Yeah, and and a red light can also give you a false sense of security. Like if you think that you can't see a red light out there, you're wrong. So get out and go test things. Get yourself and a friend and get in an open field, get it in some woods with some different lights of different varying degrees, both red and white, and see how far away you can actually see things, so that you know beyond the shadow of a doubt that you have this degree of security at X range, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Just trying stuff out, seeing what works. Try to move through vegetation and stuff at nighttime, see how that goes. It's pretty tough. Yeah, it's pretty tough in complete darkness, even with your eyes adjusted and everything. And even if you have been practicing it, it's still pretty challenging.
Absolutely.
And then a whole nother thing that we'll get into here in a little bit is navigating at night and actually knowing where you're going, and not getting lost. That's a big one.
It's kind of huge.
It's kind of a big deal.
It's kind of a big deal.
There's lots of things that you can do. Really simple ones, everything from like hand railing, like a stream. I can hear the stream. I know the stream's there because I can hear it. I don't have to see it, and I can follow that stream.
You know what direction that stream is moving.
I know which way it goes. I know my destination is next to that stream somewhere. Whatever, you know, something along those lines. Simple things like that are tactics that I usually fall back on when I talk about navigation. Anyway, I try to fall on the dumbest, easiest, foolproof kind of tactics ever. I rarely use GPSs and compasses and stuff like that. I try to use the dumbest stuff ever because it's just hard for me to mess it up. I'm not very good at that. So it's easy for me to mess things up especially when you involve technology. So as moving at night can be a pretty dangerous thing. A lot of stuff could happen moving at night when you can't see what you're doing. Number one, stick in the eye. That could be bad. I had a buddy that got a stick in the eye, just barely scratched his eye. Wasn't that bad? Super infected the next day. Had to get antibiotics, the whole deal. So eye protection is a big one. Just clear lenses like this. If you're moving through the woods at night, highly, highly recommend this. Nobody wants a stick in the eye. With or without eye protection, I highly suggest that when you move through the woods at night, you basically always have something right here in front of your face. So I'm on a trail right now. Obviously, it's not that big a deal. But if I was in the darkness it'd be really smart to have this hand right here in front of my face, just so I can feel that branch about to whack me in the face. So hand in front of the face, eye protection, really, really smart. How you move, how you walk. So let's say, Bill, if you can follow me up here a little bit. So let's say I was trying to traverse my way through something like this. This is really thick vegetation. And if I wanted to stay under the radar, a laurel thicket like this is a pretty good one. Thermal can't see through this stuff very well because it's so thick. So if you're trying to stay under the radar, this is not a bad option, but moving through it in the darkness is very, very tough. So you're gonna be in sort of a crouch position, and a crouch position is probably the safest way to move through a rugged terrain anyway, especially if you can't really see what you're doing. So as I move through, I stay kind of low in this crouch position right here. I don't walk standing up straight like this because it's much easier for me to lose my balance. I step in a hole, I can't react to it. So if I stay in this kind of crouching tiger, hidden dragon position right here, it makes it much, much easier for me to move through a thick area. I can use the trees for balance, right? I get a hold of a trunk of a tree, it can help me balance. I feel my way through and I get a hold of another branch. I can work my way through and just slowly navigate through without hurting myself. If you do this enough, it is inevitable that you are going to fall down. 100% it's going to happen. You're going to fall down. Less likely if you're in that kind of crouch positions. If you fall, it's important to practice how to fall safely. This is what we teach in everything from martial arts to just basic athletics. You need to learn how to fall safely. If I fall down and I go bam, and I fall really hard like that, I might break my wrist. I'm gonna jam something, sprain something, hurt my shoulder or elbow, and you can get hurt really bad. So if I tuck and roll, right, just a basic tuck and roll, if I'm falling, I tuck my body and I roll through, I'm much, much less likely to injure myself. And if you haven't done anything like that since 1998, it's probably a good idea for you to at least practice it once or twice before you try to move through the darkness. So practice this on a nice, soft, cushy mat or in the grass or something so you can get smooth with it. And it's not jolty. It doesn't injure my body in any way, any form or fashion. So highly suggested you learn how to fall effectively.
This one is a China classic, right? This is a $6 compass on Amazon, and at the end of the day, it is a large button compass. That's all it is. So the bezel ring, there's nothing on here that glows at night, and there is no clicks when you turn the bezel ring. So it's fine for a student to learn from, but for something that you want to trust yourself with, this is not the one I would get. It's a Brunton compass. This was from a United States Marine Corps survival kit back in the 80s. And it's a great compass made here in the United States, but it also has no clicks when you turn the bezel ring. One of the classics, Saunto, right? This is one of the civilians' favorite compasses that's out there. And this one also does not click when you turn the bezel ring, right? Still a great and an outstanding compass, and it has some phosphorus. So if it's been under some daylight, it will give you a little bit of glow on it.
But if it's been in your pack for 6 months.
But if it's been in your pack and you haven't used it, and now you're trying to use it at night, now you're going to be forced to use red light, right? Doable, yes, but there's another thing that we can do. Now, some civilian compasses will click. So when you rotate the bezel ring, you're going to hear an audible click. And most civilian compasses, that's 2 degrees for every click. The Kabinga lensatic compass, and you can probably already see the glowing of the tritium, and that shelf life of the tritium is 10 years. So after 10 years, it may or may not glow, and it's going to decrease or increase the probability of not glowing at night. But being able to see that at night is money, because now I don't need light at all. I can see everything that I need to. But every time I click or turn the bezel ring, that's 3 degrees. So if I know I was heading on a bearing and I needed to turn 30 degrees, doesn't even matter what the new azimuth is. All I need to know is I need to do my math for that 30 degrees. I'm going to turn 10 clicks in the opposite direction. So if I wanted to move 30 degrees to my right, I would rotate my bezel ring 10 clicks on our bearing, and I want to turn 30 degrees to my right. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Rotate myself until these tritium markers come back in line, and now I can move off, and I know that I'm moving 30 degrees from the heading that I was just on. Now when you start talking about having precision at night, because you don't want to get lost, you want to ensure that you know where you're going. You may not have any handrails about you. It could be in a wide open terrain. There's no major terrain features. There's no roads that you can hear. There's no streams that you can use. Now you need to trust your compass and your instruments that you have in order to be able to keep yourself moving in the right direction.
Another key navigation thing that Bill knows a lot more about than I do. He is the navigation guy. So if you want to learn more about navigation, go to Stokermatic. He is the guy. I am not the guy. But the moon can be used very similarly as the sun for navigation purposes.
Yep.
It rises in the east, sets in the west, because it's due to the rotation of the Earth and not the actual movement of those things.
Right.
So you can use the moon for just like you would the sun for navigation reasons. The stars as well, if you are caught up on your constellations and if you could find the North Star, if the stars are even visible at night, that's a whole nother story. But Bill, you have something you want to add to?
Yeah, a little nugget of knowledge. Like Jason was talking about, we know that the moon rises in the east and appears to travel and sets in the west. Now, the moon, as we know, goes through a couple of different phases from waxing to waning. Now, the interesting thing about the moon is that no matter daytime, nighttime, if you can see the moon and if it is waxing or waning, in other words, if I can see a crescent in the moon, whether the crescent is this way or whether the crescent is this way, as the moon is moving, these 2 points, no matter if it's almost a full moon or just a crescent moon, from point to point is always pointing north to south all the time, no matter if it's coming up and around this way or whether it's coming up and around this way. So it's just a real great field expedient method. And it's one of the things that I used during the SEER challenge years ago when I was moving at night and I knew what direction I had to kind of travel in. And I didn't want to use any light. I could look at the moon while I could see it and use that to keep myself moving in the right direction.
You can predict when the moon is going to be full and when it's going to be the brightest. So if you had to plan ahead, right, assuming you had time to plan ahead as far as moving at night, you could plan for a full moon evening and have yourself a little bit of extra light to guide around. But keep in mind that because you can see better, people can also see you better as well. But if you needed an extra little bit of light and you still wanted the cover of darkness to some degree, moving in a full moon is not a bad option.
Yeah, no doubt. Or the opposite, right? If I want to make sure that there's no light, I want to use the horse thief moon, which is just the little sliver, because I know it's going to be extremely hard for somebody to see me. It's going to make you hard for yourself to see anybody else. But again, it's risk versus reward when it comes to that.
Just planning ahead could be a big deal.
It's kind of a big deal.
Kind of a big deal. What I'll do at nighttime, if I don't want to kill my night vision and I need to see something, or if I don't want to be seen, I'll just put it in my fist like this, and I'll get kind of a really nice tight fist grip on it, and I'll turn that thing on for a split second, and I can let out as little or as much light as I want, right? And you can't see that right now. I can't really, other than that little red, my palm is red. Other than that, you can't really see it. But if I open up my hand just a little bit, I can let a little bit more light out, and I can see just what I need to see. Object right here in front of me, and I need to see what's going on right there. I can give it just a blip of light and see, what is that? Okay, we're good, and I can keep moving without giving up my position, perhaps, and without completely destroying my night vision. So that's the trick. I mean, I use that all the time, just to kind of on a regular daily basis. So Bill has got a headlamp that has a red filter on it, can have a red filter on it. We're going to demonstrate what it looks like to have a red light off in the distance a little bit. A lot of people think that you can't see a red light in far off, but you can. Not quite as bad as a big bright white light like that, but you can still see a red light from a pretty good distance. Boom. So there's his red light. You can see it reflecting off of the trees around him, on the underside of the leaves and stuff. Switch it to white. Obviously, much more difficult to see the red than that big bright white, but still, it's not invisible. Maybe perhaps if you needed to stop and look at your map, or you needed to get something out of your pack and you needed to use that red light, you get down low to the ground, and it makes it a little bit harder to kind of pick up, especially if he's using some sort of little terrain feature or something. If he's down a little bit of micro terrain that he can hide, then that might be the way to do it. But you can definitely still see that red light from a distance. Boom. And here's just another example of my little hand filter that I've got going on here, right? In my hand filter. And then you can see that hand glowing. If I'm moving that thing around, movement is always going to be easier to see, right? That's what the human eye is going to pick up on. So moving around a lot, if you're doing that kind of stuff, I would never be strolling along with this in my hand, waving it around like a beacon. But I would just use it temporarily if I needed to see something in front of me really quick, and then take it right back away.
Exactly like Jason's talking about. If you do need to use light, whether it's red or white, if that's the only thing that you have, get down low to the ground. Remember, line of sight, when you're down low, you have all the vegetation that's near you. So just get down low and turn that red light on. Here, if I'm looking at a map, if I'm trying to look at some notes, if I'm trying to go through some gear, it's going to be even more difficult and challenging to see a way because it's not reflecting off of anything.
Cover yourself up with your poncho.
Yeah, use a poncho,
jacket.
use a shamag, use a jacket, whatever it is. But put everything that you can back in your favor, because at night in a non-permissive environment, A, it's scary as hell because of the boogeyman that you think is out there, whether it's real or actual or just made up in your head. But the threat and that oh shit factor, if you will, of having to do something at night. So you want to put everything back in your kit bag that you can in order to maintain security and control.
The psychological thing is a big one too. You know, if you're not used to being in especially the woods at nighttime, it can be freaky. You know, it could freak you out.
Yeah.
You're not used to all the nighttime sounds and things like that. Listen, the same animals are there during the day as they are at night. Yeah,
Right.
some are more active at night. I get it. I got it. But it's the same critters, the same ones that could eat you during the daytime could eat you at nighttime.
Yep.
Like I was talking to him about the first time I went diving in the ocean at night, and I was diving for lobsters. I was trying to go get spiny lobsters in the Pacific, and it was terrifying. Like it was. I mean, you just eventually have to block that part of your mind out and just say, yeah, if it happens, it happens.
Right. If he does, he does.
That's right.
One of the challenges that we have in moving at night is understanding the distance that we're traveling. So if you've done any sort of intentional navigation with a map and a compass, you probably have what's called a pace count. And that's your way of measuring every 100 meters that you travel. Typically, you're hitting every left foot. So it's 1, 2. Well, at night, I can't walk that way, just as like Jason was talking about earlier. We know that we need to be moving a little bit more slower and methodical. So as a general rule, at night, if I'm operating in a non-contested environment where my pace count is 60 during the day on flat ground out in the open, at night out in the open, I'm probably going to stretch that out to 80 because I have to have a lot more situational awareness about myself. And it's not going to be perfect, but it's going to get me a lot closer and have a much more reasonable sense of security knowing where I'm at and how far I'm traveling. If I'm moving uphill, obviously I'm going to increase it. If I'm moving downhill, I'm not necessarily going to decrease it because, again, I'm taking much more shorter steps and I'm having to feel out with my hands and make sure nothing is smacking me in the eyeball. Mm-hmm. But knowing another factor of being able to judge distance is time that it takes. So just as much as you should know how many steps it takes or how many paces it takes for you to travel 100 meters or 1,000 meters, like I know during the day, it's going to take me 15 minutes to travel 1,000 meters. At night, I'm probably going to increase that up to 45 minutes. If it's not really contested, if it's super contested, I may increase that to, an hour and a half. So I know if I only had to move 1,000 meters and I've only moved 15 minutes at night, I am nowhere near where I'm trying to get to. So using that in conjunction with your terrain features that you have, whether it is some hills, you're moving uphill, you know you're moving down a spur or a draw, you know that you have some water that's moving off near you. Use all these things into conjunction so that you kind of know where you're getting at, because you might be looking for that attack point in order to shorten up some distance, or you might be looking for that handrail. So you just need to get out and practice and know how long it takes you to move at night without using nods, using nothing but your eyeballs that you have, and being acclimated without having any light.
And the only way to know is to go practice.
Go do
the things.
Go do these things. One of the things that I used a long time ago, back in the 90s BC, that's before cell phones, was using these miniature chem lights, and they are super small. They're only about an inch in length, but they work just the same as the big ones. And when I pop them open and let them start working, I can take this, if I'm on a patrol and I'm moving with a compadre, if you will, I can put this in my mouth. Now with my mouth closed, you can't see it, but I can get some distance between me and Jason, and we'll do that. And when I turn back around and open my mouth,
there you are.
He's going to be able to see it.
Yeah.
And we know that this chem light is not very visible off in the distance, and it's extremely not visible when it's in your mouth and you're focusing it back to the person who's behind you. So it's a great way to help maintain security in your patrol, because you can only have security as far away as you are from somebody, right?
Right. And staying in contact with your buddy too, not getting too far off, too far apart from one another. That's a pretty big deal.
Right. Kind of a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah, super easy to see that. Morse code.
That was Morse code for stay stoked.
Stay stoked. That's right. If you guys haven't checked out Bill's channel, Stokermatic, make sure you do that. I'll put a link in the description for it.
Word.
Stay stoked.
Stay stoked.
Thanks for watching, friends. Make sure you hit the thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't done so already. Leave a comment. Any comment will do. See you on the next one. Okay.